So here we're in section 1.4, and I'm going to do a quick example of how we determine whether or not an argument is valid or invalid. I think personally the easiest way to do this is to make a truth table. So here's an example of an argument, and here's the truth table. So I went through, there's only two different statements in the argument, R and P, so those are my first two columns, and then my third column is this statement right here. If you had R, P, and Q, you'd have to have three different columns, which would give you 8 rows, as I showed you in a previous video. So from the truth table, it's relatively easy to determine whether or not the argument is valid. The definition of being valid in your book says that whenever any of the hypotheses are true, the conclusion also has to be true. If that's the case, then the argument's valid. So let me repeat that. Whenever either of the hypotheses are true, so whenever either of these two are true, then the conclusion also has to be true. So P would have to be true. If that's the case, then the argument is valid. So based on that definition, the only entries in my truth table I'm concerned at looking at are the entries where this statement, not R implies not P, and this statement R are both true. Any entries where one or the other or both are false, I don't care about. So if I go to the first row, here's one of the hypotheses, which is true, and R is another of the hypotheses, which is also true. So this row is of interest to me. So if you look through, there's only 2 rows where both R and not R implies not P are both true, and those 2 rows happen to be the first 2 rows. So those are really the only 2 rows of interest. Now this argument is valid if whenever both hypotheses are true, the conclusion is also true. And you can see that happens in the first row. Hypothesis true, conclusion true. That fits the definition of being valid. But this second row creates a problem because here is hypothesis true, but here the conclusion is false. So because of this second row, this argument is invalid. So because of this second row, we can say the argument is invalid. Now, your book also presents all of the rules of logic for determining whether an argument is valid. And I'm not going to focus on teaching those because I think it's more memorization than I like to worry about. If you just make the truth table, you don't really have to memorize anything, and it's relatively quick to determine the validity of an argument. But if you already know the rules of logic and you want to use those, or you find them interesting and you want to learn them, you're more than welcome to do that. But I think the truth table is the quickest and easiest way.